Oh, hello, and welcome to this very special episode of Power Hour with Dare to Scale from our desk to yours. On behalf of Evan and me, please join us in welcoming our first guest. That's why this is a special episode, our first guest to the Power Hour. Today's guest is Surbhi Dedhia. Surbhi is an expert in digital marketing, and she's also a brand specialist. Surbhi is also the founder of Digital Genie, Jot My Bio, and she runs her own podcast called The Making of a Thought Leader. Surbhi, welcome to the show. How wonderful to have you here.
I can't describe in one word how excited I am to be on this show because from the other side, I have heard all of your lives and participated in, and now I'm live. It's unbelievable. Thank you.
Surbhi, welcome. We've had a great deal of fun, and as you say, you've been part of our journey and made some wonderful contributions. And today's going to be very special because you'll make your own personal Digital Genie contribution. Now, everybody remember, we're going through the strategic playing field, and you may know this as your sandbox. And remember, there are several elements to it. There's your why, your who, your what, your where, and your how. We had a great discussion 2 weeks back on the why, and some very interesting questions popped up on that. And today we're moving on to the who, and that obviously very specifically is why Surbhi is actually with us.
Yes, and stay with us till the end because Surbhi is going to be sharing with us the worksheet that she has developed and the one that she actually works with her own clients in through their journey of building their buyer persona. And of course, this is a power hour, only an hour. So it's impossible to go through that in-depth worksheet. But I know Surbhi has picked up some absolutely highlights of that worksheet to go in depth. So you as our viewer, you as our listener is going to take away some great action points to now put into practice. So before we go in there, I want to put up a question to Surbhi, because this is a question posted last time by Rohit Basi. Rohit, when we were talking about the company's whys and the who's and the hows and whatever, asked a wonderful question. And the question was, do customers really care what your company's why and who and how and what is? Evan's response was, well, people buy from people they like. And the conversation continued. So, Surbhi, what do you think? Do customers really care?
Firstly, thank you to Rohit to ask that question. And just to put some what Evan said in perspective, people buy from people. Let's look at some statistics. Elon Musk has a following of 59 million people following him.
Yeah.
Whereas Tesla has only 10 million followers. Let's look at Tim Cook, 12.9 million followers, whereas Apple has just 6.6 million followers. That itself says that people want to understand who the leadership is, what their vision is, what they're bringing to the market through their companies and products. So people do buy from people, and that's why they care about, and it's very important for a company to put across their why, how, and who, because then they are directly talking to the who. And this is why buyer personas are going to be so interesting in today's conversation.
Oh, brilliant. And thank you for those statistics. Evan, you were saying?
No. It's very interesting. Like you said, Surbhi, people do buy from, well, obviously people, yes, but people they like. And why the why is important is you make that connection. And that's tremendously important because it's, unless there's a recommendation that's made to you, somebody else that you trust, you then going on somebody else's credibility, and that's why the why is important.
True, very true.
Yeah.
I just want to give a shout out to some of the people who are joining us and saying hello. Emma Reimer has joined us from the UK. Good morning. Good morning, Emma. And Anand has joined in from India. Hello, Anand. And thank you. Thank you for joining us. We enjoy these conversations and we love it when people like you join us from all over the world. So, Surbhi, over to you to start the actual bulk of this conversation. So,
Right.
Mike, it's an open mic. Over to you. Lead
Thank
us
you so
through
much.
what
Thank
the
you.
building a buyer's persona is.
Thank you. So buyer personas, just to have everybody understand, is like a fictional but realistic representation of your buyers, of your customers. So what we are trying to do here is to understand who your target audience is and put them onto paper with certain sections. What we do at Digital Genie is we've put together this 10-point section to start with. And the team may put the link later for the worksheet to be downloaded. But for buyer personas, it is very important for us to categorize and segment the information that we have so that it helps us to talk to the customers in a knowledgeable and intelligent way. One perspective I would like to share here is about, gone are the days, traditionally, the marketing was, you're driving on the road and there is a big flashy billboard talking to you. You're seeing your favorite cereal and suddenly an ad pops up. Those days are gone because that was a masses approach. The companies would just send out information and it was a hit or a miss. Everybody saw it, irrespective of whether they were their customers or no. But today, going to the digital world, it is completely a different ballgame. You need to know who you are selling to so that your efforts are not wasted. And that's why buyer persona comes in the play. Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, it was so important, and thank you for that visual that you put instantly in our heads about we're driving down and you see a big hoarding, which really is talking to the masses. So yeah, thank you for that. That's
So
quite
on that, from that perspective, Surbhi, can you just help distinguish that for us? You're referring to outbound and inbound kind of marketing. So can you just distinguish that a little bit further?
Sure. So today it is more of collecting the information about who you are talking to in a knowledgeable, intelligent way, and then designing your entire communications marketing strategy to talk to the target audience, because it's a noisy world. You don't want to have a hit or miss approach. Yeah. When it comes to, this is completely inbound, which means you're taking information in and then you're processing it, internalizing it, making it more bite-sized for your target audience to understand, which is in the outbound kind of marketing. It's also called as push versus pull strategy, where you're pushing information that we do this is our product, instead of that, pull information from the audience, segment it, and then when you're talking to that particular persona, you just talk very knowledgeably to that segment about your product category.
Yeah, very. Again, I know this is already in the makings of a great conversation. I just also want to continue giving the shout out to people joining us from Germany. Agnes has joined in from Germany, and there's some already great comments coming through. Hello to Sharafuddin. Yes.
Hello.
And this is nice. Surbhi, there are questions coming in already. Sure. I'm going to post one. Guys, thank you very much. Keep those questions coming, because I really want to get into the meat of the conversation over here. But I will post this question. Agnes says Surbhi has mentioned the bigwigs like Tesla's buyer persona. The question is, when is the right time for a startup to have a buyer persona?
Right. Brilliant question. And thank you for asking that, Agnes. The time to start or making a buyer persona is from day one. So as soon as you have an idea and you're setting up a business, I think that's when you start building your buyer persona. Now, what big difference is that big wigs like Tesla, Apple, they have huge amount of data about who's buying, purchasing their products, what kind of consumers are looking at, what type of products within their, the spectrum of the products that they have. What happens at the startup level is you are just starting up. You have a rough idea of who your customer is, but you really don't know the detailings of what we are going to talk about later. And that conversation might really help you gain some insight into how you can, in fact, start putting those points together.
Very nice. And remember, you have joined in the Power Hour with Dare to Scale. From our desk to yours. Today is a special episode where we are joined by Surbhi Dedhia. She's going to be walking us through the buyer persona. So wherever you have joined us from, whether on LinkedIn Live or on YouTube, stay with us till the end because we are going straight into the 10-point worksheet. Surbhi, over to you.
Thank you. So the 10-point worksheet it's 10 because these are the basic 10 pointers or areas that you need to cover while building your buyer persona. The first obviously is demographics, and it's often repeated. I think business owners really have an idea of demographic, like who it is, where they are, what's the age group like, what's their gender, what is their location, who they are reporting to, what is their functional role. There are these demographical details, which are, I think, easily available for anybody looking to build the buyer persona. The second part or the section is the psychographic, which means what are their goals, what are their metrics that they're measured on, what is the motivation. The other one is the personality traits, like what is their tendencies, like, based on the family, the culture, the finer nuances. What are the challenges that they face on a day-to-day basis in terms of achieving their metrics on the professional side. And then there are components such as technology traits, which are now gaining a lot more importance because our lives have gone digital. So what are the technology traits of this individual? Like, are they very tech savvy? Are they not? Are they, early adopters, late bloomers, those kind of things. The sixth or the seventh one is like the real challenge statement. Like, what is, if you had to say in, like, say, less than 50 words, this one sentence about your target persona, what would that challenge statement be? Like, that is a common thread along the professional journey. People in purchasing department, they always have cost budget constraints. They cannot, or even in technology side, they cannot keep on adding new technology to their company. So these are some of the challenge statements, but what we really need to go at is the real one. The eighth one is the common objections. Again, challenges will give way to objections, which can be again further segmented into, based on the company, based on the department, based on, the role. The ninth one is the messaging, the keywords that are, or they also call it in the Gen Z, millennials lingo, it's the lingo. Today, the world has gone to from LOL to, so all those jargons or the acronyms, what are the keywords that impact that persona? And the last one in the 10-point, worksheet is what you can do to address all this. The top 3 things that you as a business can do to help this persona in the overall scheme of things. So that is where this template ends, and that's what it covers really.
I mean, Surbhi, the framework is absolutely brilliant. What I would like to understand, and maybe let's focus on, is what's the difference between like the B2C, business to consumer, versus a business to business kind of persona? And I mean, ultimately, we're dealing with small businesses here, so it's the bent, I suppose, is more business, B2C. So we're talking more to the consumer. Right. Can you just walk us through a little bit about the B2C and B2B difference?
Sure. So I think it's a very interesting question, and it is good that we are able to distinguish this into B2C and B2B, because it is about the who. Remember, who is it that you are selling to? So now, when it comes to from business to end consumer, so which is B2C, it is more emotional, because that product or service is going to impact and apply to that individual level. So user profiles should cover some more bit of emotions, feelings, impacts that they like, probably bring in more of personal side into the buyer persona. Other part of B2C persona is a focus on day-to-day habits, the social habits, the groups that they are part of on a social personal level, like the hobbies that the persona is pursuing, perhaps, because these smaller nuances will feed into a lot more insight into how you're probably going to talk to that person. Moving on to B2B side. So, it is very interesting in B2B side because finally the person who pays the bill is a decision maker. So, but in that situation, the B2B or the decision maker is not really going to consume a lot more of your content. It is the user. So you have to be able to make the distinction between in the B2B side between the decision maker and the user, and therefore the messaging or the characteristics that you want to bring into your persona is more based on what are the decision makers' current challenges and motivation, or use more of logic or the benefits, features of the product. So your communication shifts accordingly in the B2B or B2B side, the C side.
On this note, I just want to put out a question to all the viewers and first of all, hello Rajiv, welcome back. It is always wonderful to have you here on the show with us. And Emma,
Hi.
yes, love a bit of marketing with my breakfast, says Emma. It is such a brilliant topic. And so the question that I want to put out to everybody out here is to ask, so what was your one takeaway when you went through your own buyer's persona or discovering your own core customer journey? Tell us a little bit about what was the one thing that you still carry from that journey, which you still apply in your marketing. And we're really looking forward to hear that. So Surbhi, over to you again. And you were going to pick some highlights from this 10-point worksheet, aren't you?
Yes, sure. So I think I covered all the 10 points. And
Yes.
I think the very important one, demographics, as I said, is very easy to get. And it is something which is the base level. Everybody should have that. The next one that is very important and what I like to work on is the goals. The goals of this individual. What is that person's role in the company? What is the KPI of that person? How is that person driving it? So even in terms of interviewing that person, it is very important to ask, how can I help that will make your achieving your KPI more easier for you? So that kind of interaction in the conversation will give insights into, okay, look, I am on a very steep KPI, steep sales target, or even very recently, people saying that everybody has gone remote. It is so hard to kind of call the company phone and get hold of people to interact with. So those kind of KPIs is important to put in. And I think when you talk about KPIs to that person, it also covers this bit of motivation. What motivates that individual to do what he or she doing? What are the key factors that are impacting that individual at a organizational or departmental level? So that is important, I think, in the 10-point worksheet that I've developed. That is one of the things that I love working on.
So demographics, goals, and sorry, what was the third one?
So I park goals, motivation, and metrics all together. And depending on whether, when you start, you want to just park everything together so you have like a foundation. But as you grow and go along, important to then segment it, separate it, because then each of them will give you more information. I think one point is very important here, and often this is like this classic mistake everybody makes, is that let's start with buyer persona, let's make it, and then they just don't use it, which is criminal according to me, because when you make a buyer persona, you got to know how to make it actionable and use it. And that is why in the 10-point, I have compressed it to the bare minimum 10. And then as you go along, as you start using it, you may want to then further segment it, further elaborate it in different levels, because really it is fictional, but it is realistic. You know it's like
Yeah.
it's that way, that you need to
Yeah.
have it realistic representation
Yeah.
of your target market. Yeah.
So, in one of the points that you are picking up, Surbhi, walk us through a for example. How would you fill one of those sections? So, what does that look like for a, so just so we can,
Sure.
yeah, thank you.
So for one of my recent clients, they are into technology, and they talk to business owners, and they are not request, but it's almost like they're selling them technology. But these business owners have not used technology as the main, a main game changer into their business. They do business based on Excel sheets, and that also is a technology, but it's not like an integrated connecting technology. Today is all about cloud. You use everything, which is integrates with a lot more software and all of that. So now this persona is a business owner. What are his goals? His goal is to run business successfully, ensure that the team is growing and they are able to take forward the growth to the next level. One of the motivations for him is that when the team grows, then he is able to kind of focus on other important areas rather than just calculating the business done on an Excel sheet. So these are some of the motivations that he will have. But when you explain to him the technology, what will be the challenge? The challenge will be, oh, it is so expensive. I think 2-3 years ago, people invested in technology, but then these kind of personas are now perplexed with the thought of everything has become so fast, digitally so advanced. How does this technology now work for me? So I think that is one of the, again, buyer persona comes into play, because you can always go back to buyer persona and ask these questions, whether it is still relevant, what you've written in the beginning of when you made the buyer persona, whether these are even relevant now, these pointers. Yeah.
So I want to jump in here, Surbhi, with again, there's a subtle distinction that may not be clear to people who are listening. When we talk about like a niche statement, and I'm going to share just a little bit of maybe some of the dare to scale one. We talk about entrepreneurs owning brick and mortar businesses who've hit a scaling up ceiling. Now, there's a little bit more detail in there. There's a bit of decision fatigue, and they're struggling with a few things here and there. Now, we just say entrepreneurs. Okay, we're a bit more specific. It's male entrepreneurs are generally who we would first talk to. How does the persona or I suppose that specific persona drill down, or how does it relate to the niche statement itself?
You mean how does the demographic of that individual?
We talk about a male entrepreneur. So how do I then recognize, or where do I find that person? Is that where the link is between the niche statement and the persona?
So the niche statement is really that challenge statement, or one statement that kind of is a recurring theme across his professional career or his role per se. And I think depending on the demographic. Now, again, the demographics come in play because you want to use the local nuances. You want to, when you are, so remember, bio persona, we are creating it so that we are able to communicate properly to that person. Yeah. So look, that gender specific may apply in certain businesses. It is not necessary that every business, again, everything is so variable in that fact, in that way, because when you say that your target persona or this individual is a gender, like, as a male CEO who is having the way you will talk to him or where you will talk to him will come into play, because I think over a period of time of this digital transition, there is a clear way of looking at, females are more attuned towards, certain social media, or males are attuned towards certain social media, and how you will talk to them. So those kind of things are important. I think one sideline that I think I can remember from my experience is this, that when you are initially talking to your target persona, it's more about education. So being from a gender perspective, it will be male tend to be more logical, more kind of connecting the dots in a way that if this is the product, and how is it going to impact, what is the immediate ROI kind of thing. I think the females, if you're going to talk to them in the same situation, you may think about the presentation part of it, the colors that you will approach with, the kind of visually you will attract them with the emotional connect. So there is certain finer nuances, but I think if you build this up as a 10-point scale, you will able to draw a lot more strings to collect, to then very intelligently speak to that audience in a different, from the startup stage, or larger business scale, or from the initial conversation, the education education piece of interacting with the customers. Then again, when they're in the middle of the funnel, again educating them, and the end of the funnel, finally, convincing them. So those areas are very important.
No, I love it. And what you were referring to, colors, for example.
Yeah.
That would fit into personality traits, which is one of the boxes within the persona. So while that niche statement is sort of not so much high level, it's specific, and yet it talks about a person who has a bunch of pain that you want to deal with. As you say, it totally makes sense. You know where to find these people, and like Washa says all the time, you've got this target. Right,
yeah.
There's layers to the target, and what you're really describing is there's that bullseye. Who do you say yes to? Because if you're not saying yes to the right people, conversely, you're not saying no to everybody else. So it really is finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Just to pick up what you were saying over there, Evan, is a line that we actually use in our toolkit is know who to say no to, so that you know who to say yes to. So I think that's pretty much the theme of this discussion today. So there are a couple of questions that have come through from our viewers over here, and I'm going to pose them to you, Surbhi. And those who are just joining us, welcome to this very special episode of Power Hour with Dare to Scale, from our desk to yours. We are talking to Surbhi, who is a digital marketing and a brand specialist, expert views on building your buyer's persona. Surbhi, the question is from Rajiv. And Rajiv said, is the MVP and prototype stage a validation stage to validate the buyer persona as well in case of a startup, or a pre-launch readiness for an existing business? So to summarize, Rajiv says, refining it before a full rollout may help minimize risk. Your thoughts?
Absolutely, Rajiv. Fantastic question. And, I would approach it from the way that if you use this 10-point template at a minimum validation product, then at that stage, you want to just fill in few boxes. And it is going to be natural that you're not going to be able to really go deep dive in filling this, but at least it will be as a start point. Be it with co-founders that you are working with, everybody will be able to see that. I think one of the things that I frequently notice is that when one department does this it's again switching to a larger organization because I'm talking about department, or when one person just fills this up as a bio and leaves it, this is a document which is like a resource. I really call it as a resource that across department, everybody should use it and refer to it because it has insights for everybody. So going back to your question of refining it at full rollout, obviously will help you to talk very very knowledgeably, very clearly with the target audience. And as you communicate, the other part of digital marketing today is that measuring part where you are talking to a customer or a target audience and seeing did it work, and if not, what didn't work. So like for example, click-through rates or open rates of an email campaign or social media engagement, that all will bring in data to again go back to the drawing board stage and saying that, okay, look, this is what has happened on this campaign, and it is working but not with so much success, or with success, so what we can do more. And that again can be detailed into buyer persona into that section, which is how we can help. The top three pointers that I said, what we need to do as an organization to help this persona, that's where you again go back and feed this data. So it is nice that somebody who's really starting off can put some perspective in place for a buyer persona.
Oh, brilliant. And what you were talking about earlier, Surbhi, is about a department, is a great segue, which leads us into the next question, which is posed by Agnes. So Agnes says, so which department in a company is responsible for building the buyer's persona? Because I believe responsibility is important, so we don't land in Surbhi's criminal page of not keeping up with our persona. So, and I have a couple of thoughts to share about this as well. But Surbhi, first of all, over to you. Which department is responsible for building this?
Yeah, I'm assuming this is for SME, and when it comes to SME, there may be a marketing person on board or a smaller department, and it could start there, because marketing is a department which is going to use this persona the most. However, you sit together as a team, as an entire top level team, like marketing head, sales head, business development head, operations, all the people important in your organization sit together and talk about this. Because while it is the keeper of it, or the primary user of it is marketing department, it is very important to get insights from everyone, because they are touching customers or target customers in a different way, or they're looking at it in a different way. If I can put this in an analogy, there is a story, right? The blind men and the elephant. So there were blind men, and they were touching different parts of the elephant, and somebody said, this is a trunk of the tree for the leg, this is a rope for the tail, and everybody's talking about the same elephant but in different ways, right? So we don't want this to happen in an organization. Instead, we all sit together and talk about and again, the base can be this 10-point worksheet, because then everybody's talking has a place to start. And in terms of not landing on my criminal page, if you make it, it's not a day, it's not a thing like you do it once on a day and finish it. It is a creative process, if you will, where you keep doing it on a regular basis. And of course, everything in marketing can get a bit time consuming, if that's what they say, but you can always piecemeal it, which means you start, you do it, revisit it, because on the actual field, you're doing a lot more with your customers. You're interacting with them, your sales people are talking to them, your operations guys are making sure that they're receiving stuff, they're doing the product development guys, everybody is doing something or the other related to the business, so that all data can come back in to developing buyer persona.
Thank you. That's very useful. And before I go into a couple of thoughts that occur to me on who is responsible for this, I want to put a question out again on a scale of 1 to 10. Everybody who has joined us today, tell us in the comments box, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high do you think is on how critical and how high in that scale is building your core customer or your buyer persona? Tell us, just put in the number, because that's a great indicator of where do you think individually should this process be? and how live is this document. So looking forward to hearing from everybody, what on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 of course being the most critical, and 1 maybe. So tell us in the comments box. Now, something about what you were saying, everybody sits down, or in a very large corporate scenario, you have the department heads who sit down.
Right.
So let's chunk it down a little bit, somewhere in the middle. So we're not
Okay.
talking about absolute startups where it's a founder or a co-founder, and there's not much of a team to speak about, and neither are we talking about the corporate. So somewhere in the middle where businesses are now established and they're now
Right.
looking to scale up. So there are about 8 or 10 people in the company, maybe 20, 25 people, but these are still founder-led companies. So
Right.
in that scenario, I would say, and this is what we talk about a lot in data scale as well, because, and exactly with following your elephants analogy, Surbhi, it's useful to actually engage most of the team there, because it's still a small company. People
Yes.
see different things, and people see different people in their own perspective. So if the founder says, well, this is why we started the company, this is who we started the company for, and yet somebody in the front line may have a different perspective to say, well, actually we're talking to this person as a biased persona, but on the field, these are the people who are most receptive to what we are offering, or maybe that's what these people are hearing. So I love that you said, make it a team effort, and
Right.
not 1 or 2 people, or it's not in isolation that one department develops it and then flows it down to everybody else to follow. And the second point that you said, which was most useful, was this is a document that will continue evolving. As your company
Absolutely.
grows, as your product evolves, so must this.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
really good
So
points.
thank you. Good points here, Varsha. And I think if I have to really chunk it down to the middle section where
Yeah.
the startup has now become
Yeah.
established business and is growing,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting stage at this point because they have started the business. There is a history. There's a
Yeah.
history that they can rely on. So the first thing that they can look at is who has been buying from them and what kind of conversations they are being able to hold with them. And
Yeah.
the best part about being in the middle is that now you have built this trust and rapport with your clients. So now you can actually go back to them and say, hey, thank you for being such a loyal customer. Can you please help me fill this survey? And that's where
Yeah.
you start talking to that individual. And you also know from your customer at this stage that who is the user, if it is a B2B segment, who is the user and who is the decision maker. So you can even expand your survey to both the user and the decision maker. We don't have time to like really go into like how you design this and all that, but I think what happens is you in this at least stage, you know that you have some customers to go back to. You have an idea of who could be your potential customers. So you can also reach out to them and ask them to give you some data. I think one of the very smart trick that a lot of companies now have started using is when you put out a content asset for download, or when you are asking people to subscribe to any of your newsletters or content, you can actually ask one critical question to within that form itself. So which means now if you are trying to ask prospect that are you the decision maker, or what is your team size, or those one question which can help you give some insight into. So for SME level, I think that is one of the ideas you guys can use, that please put in that one
Nice.
critical question that can help you get some insight into who is your
Nice.
target audience. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, very, very good. And I think I understand the question posed by Yanoma. And the question says, does sales funnel effective as a lead magnet? So I think, is that question making sense? Yanoma, could you maybe describe this question a little bit, because it kind of leads to what you were talking about, Surbhi. So it's a nice segue you've made into lead magnet, and how do you use the buyer persona even during the lead magnet, and how do you get that information? So we'll wait for a clarification on the question. And in the meantime, Rajiv has asked a question. Evan, do you see Rajiv's question on the screen?
Yeah, I do. Rajiv is asking, startups and entrepreneurs normally start with a hypothesis, which they want to validate through what they create as the business idea. How do you see your framework, Surbhi, working to convert the hypothesis into a buyer's persona?
Yes, I think that, Rajiv, that's a good question, and I think buyer persona is a brilliant way to actually do hypothesis testing as well. When you start a business, you talk about the minimum viable product, and you will also have some kind idea about your vision, what you want to, the difference that you're making, the problem that you're solving, and that's where even a buyer persona can come in place, because then the problem you are solving is for who, and the demographics part, like where is this customer base, what are his challenges, what are his motivations, all those things you can start putting it in bullet points. We don't need to be having paragraphs, and we can just have bullet points on this as you're building this product. And as you test your product, you will get more insights. So that's where you again go back. So I think this resource can be definitely used as at that stage as well.
Oh, very nice. Remember, if you have just joined us, you have joined Power Hour with Dare to Scale, and today we are talking to Surbhi. It's all about building your buyer's persona. And there are questions that keep coming to us as soon as we announce the next Power Hour. We do get a lot of questions that come through on yourmentor@daretoscale.com. We will address a couple of those. Most of them are wonderful sort of insights that come to us. And keep those questions coming today, right now, here on the comments box. And we'll read out those couple of questions that have come to us on the email. But straight after this, Surbhi, what is the next point that we're going to talk about here?
I think I want to just move a bit away from the template for this instance, is because I am still thinking of what Rajiv asked me on hypothesis testing. And only reason being, that today, like, and connecting hypothesis testing to what you asked earlier for the people in the middle, the SMEs, how can they use as a booster to grow their business, as buyer persona as a concept. So, we talked about SMEs having access to customers, SMEs knowing who their prospects are, or being able to talk to the prospects in different ways. I think what we didn't talk about, and what has become very important in the pandemic era, is the analytics part, the digital behavior, the insights that are available aplenty. If only that can be, integrated together, pulled it back from different sources, and a story can be woven through those analytics. So Google Analytics is a great place to start. There are other skills like social listening. If you just put a hashtag and follow it, you can listen to a lot more conversations that are happening out there. So I think those things are something that, of course, marketing department or people who are more skilled at that role can do this, but they can bring that insights back to this buyer persona and say what's happening. In fact, again, going back to Rajiv, the startup stage, if your product is talking to a certain segment, and that segment, you can also use this social listening skills to understand what's happening in the market. What are people talking about? And that will also give you insights which can be brought into the buyer persona document. Yeah.
Wonderful. Hey, Surbhi, if anybody who doesn't know, we actually did a podcast recently with Surbhi. It's on daretoscale.fm/26. And that was all about marketing. So it's like the bigger picture. And today we're talking about a fairly sort of niche part of that bigger picture, which is the buyer persona. In the podcast, you talked about measuring, and you've mentioned that a couple of times already. And look, in the technical side, you can do A/B testing and those sort of things where you can try different ways of speaking to your target audience. Generally speaking, how quickly will your core customer change, do you think? Just because the evolution of the customers is really exponential. Just the customer taste, how they interact. I mean, there's more mobile devices now than there are desktops, that kind of stuff, and everything is instant. It's all on the phone, on the go. How quickly does the persona change, and how do you recommend keeping up with that customer?
Very nice question. I think I also did a blog post on this. Questions to ask for your buyer persona during COVID era. That's the blog post I've done. And it is, McKinsey says that the report from McKinsey says that the ability or the consumer behavior has changed 5-folds in the first 4 weeks of the pandemic. What this means, I mean, it's more relevant to B2C, this report, but I think what this really means is that, that the consumer behavior has changed so dramatically that some organizations have had to completely change their business model. Look at what has happened here in Dubai itself. There are so many delivery apps, or there are so many grocery apps. There's just so much plenty to choose from on the B2C side. Yeah. So the whole segment a new segment has evolved as such. So I think one of the first questions businesses should ask: has our business pivoted and has our business evolved? Are we talking to the same customer even today? Yeah. And then from the customer side also, has the customer evolved? Like, everybody's jumped onto digital. So obviously there is an evolution, but what happens to the core habits? What happens to the core motivations? What happens to the core challenges? Are they still same, or there are more challenges or different motivations now? I think everybody's motivation today is, can we just get some time on hand, because it seems to be such a breakneck speed. So that could be a possibility for a customer as well. Is there a new sub-segment? Actually, I think there was a brilliant study made where there is a completely new sub-segments in customer segments that are developing because of the pandemic and the pivot that has happened. Yeah. What about customers' journey? Previously it used to be the entire journey that you could go, okay, the customer looked us up on website, then they came to the shop, they bought, and they interact. Like there could be this physical component. Now everything is digital. So, and in digital era, the last mile of the customer journey has even become very different, because they have seen you, they have evaluated you, they've built the trust through all the education, all the websites, digital stuff that you've made. How do you convert that? And conversion cycles have also become shorter, yeah, from very hardcore B2B side of things. In fact, in B2B segment, previously it used to be you meet people in symposiums and events, go back, and then start your marketing communication process. 18 months go before a conversion is made. In certain B2B segment, you see. Now that has completely changed. You meet people on Zoom, and marketing communication gets into action. Probably in 6 months, you are making a deal. It's become very different. Yeah. So likewise, competitive landscape has changed as well, because everybody is in the same boat, right? So everybody is that landscape has changed. So how do you play? Again, buyer persona can help you, because then you are drawing insights from segments, sub-segments of your customers. And then I think some of the trends that are evolving and that we are seeing, like everybody is on Zoom. There are so many apps and video interactive abilities that we've built. So these are some of the trends so look at these things. And I think businesses today have much more data and understanding to be absorbed than the previous times. I think that is the silver lining of all this.
Oh,
Totally.
absolutely brilliant. Evan, go ahead. I was just going to say we are 10 minutes out and I'm going to cover a couple of questions. But first, Evan, over to you.
Surbhi, I mean, that's a wonderful synopsis of how things are changing. I mean, quite some time ago, we did a podcast where the customer themselves are changing at an exponential rate, but companies are only changing at a linear rate. So sometimes there is a bit of a disconnect. So I think, in fact, on your podcast, you said marketing's not hard. So, you don't have to do everything because there is a lot to do and there's a lot of information. It's about doing, at a minimum, a couple of things right. And I think my big takeaway from here is it really is get your customer persona right. So you're speaking the right language because there will be resonance in the marketplace and people will find you. And then the other thing is just being aware, not absolutely knee deep in the stats and in the weeds, but being aware of how things are changing,
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant summary of this, Evan. I like that. Don't go knee deep.
It's frightening, man. Anyway. Also, there's a couple of questions out there.
There are a couple of questions, a couple of just notes on why and how a buyer's persona is critical for a business. And I'm going to read out the message back from Yanoma or Genoma. Please forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name not quite right. I will read out what the longer sort of explanation is. So it says, a lead magnet is a type of content that can capture customers' data in exchange for the information downloaded by the potential customers. Absolutely, we totally get that. And will be added to the CRM. Then later we can send promotions or newsletters when customers finally buy the product and that are converted through the sales funnel too. So I think more than a question, I think it really was a walking us through that journey of what happens. So correct me if I'm wrong now, Surbhi, to say the buyer persona comes first and then the lead magnet designed to ensure that it is targeted towards the person who is actually downloading it, and then building that entire nurturing campaign right up to not just stopping to the point where they buy something from you, but also to really nurture them as your clients who keep coming back, and the engagement just keeps getting deeper.
Sure. I think Genomer or Yanomer has summarized it correctly. And what you said, Varsha, is also right. I think the lead magnet can come later. And the understanding of customer is the first step, definitely. I think one thought I want to leave you guys with is, it's always okay to target cold leads with buyer persona driven content than to nurture warm leads with content that is not buyer persona driven. So warm leads that you think are in your funnel may be warm according to you, and even if you're nurturing them with content, if it is not buyer persona driven, you're not going to be able to get that ROI. So for cold leads, you got to go if you are using buyer persona to drive your content marketing strategy, you are able to convert cold leads faster than non-buyer persona driven content.
And which brings me, this is good, this is quite useful, which brings me to the question that came through on yourmentor@daretoscale.com. And interestingly, this is something that we were talking about yesterday, Surbhi, when we were during our short meet and greet call, is can a company have more than one buyer persona? Why do we talk about this in the singular only? Because there could be more than one.
Absolutely, there could be. This? Yes, I think it's a great question. And buyer personas, if it is only one, it can be limiting. But if there are many, then it can be too diluted. So, having a right number is also important. And with that, I will go further to say that, if you imagine concentric circles, your target bullseye customer being the center, you want to have at least one or two, at least two personas for that target customer. Now, in startup stages, it can be difficult to have like further segment, but in SME stage, you can definitely see that there is this one type of customer that keeps coming. But hey, because my product has also grown, I can also attract this different type of customer and get the buyer persona for that. So 2 buyer personas there. And then we talked about concentric circles. So there is a outer circle, which are the influencers, which are your referral partners. So and this is for a SME to a large organization stage where they have much more muscle, much more content that they can talk about to attract towards your brand. So in that stage, you may want to talk to the outer circles as well. So you may have one persona for each of the circles. So that way, when the content strategy works, you can always talk to these 2-3 different personas as well. But don't go beyond 5 because it can get very diluted. And that's not our objective here.
And if I put my dare to scale hat on, everything comes from your strategy. And your persona is definitely a very big part of that, but it's definitely part of your strategy. So like you're saying, Surbhi, it's important to have maybe some diversification, but not too wide, because then you're diluting your strategy and the wheels fall off somewhere and you have no idea where you should be. So it's very important to stay focused on where you're going. And if you need to, tweak the persona as you're going along.
Absolutely. Tweak the same persona that you have built over and over again over a period of years that you have started your business. Keep refining that, fine-tuning that, and that will give you more value. I think that investment of time is definitely higher ROI than creating more personas.
You bet. You bet. Evan, any closing thoughts from you, please, before I ask Surbhi for a couple of best practices to put out there, and I will begin to wrap up today's Power Hour. Evan, over to you for some closing thoughts.
Surbhi, it's been absolutely wonderful to get your insight on the persona and, flavoring that with a little bit of the journey, the sales funnel, how you talk, whether male, female, colors, language, all that sort of thing. And it's wonderful because we have worked with you before when that language actually filters down throughout the organization and suddenly everybody is in tune with who you're talking to. My big takeaway is the power of your worksheet that you put together, and that's actually available. The link is actually in all the comments. Very, very powerful. And you know what? Tweak it, get it right, and you really will start speaking the right language. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And for those who have joined us, thank you very much for joining us. And don't go away just yet, because Surbhi is going to give us a couple of best practices that you can right now take away and implement, or keep it tucked away. So the next time you sit down to build your buyer's persona, pull them out and see how those can be applied. So Surbhi, over to you for a couple of best practices that you want to leave for our viewers today.
Sure. So I think the number one best practice that I can think of is make your buyer persona actionable. Meaning, do not, after this power hour, maybe you are very motivated and then you'll say, oh, I need to really put this down and, use the template, and you've used it, but don't just keep it there. Make it actionable. Start talking to people around you who are into talking to your clients. I think from my experience, I feel the buyer personas got as a marketer, got me to understand sales even better, because the salespeople were really talking to the clients, and the clients are behaving on the digital journey. So from a marketing side, I was able to map that. So to connect everything together, it really helped me to deliver the best results, the best campaign. So yeah, make it actionable, put it into action, put it to use. The second best practice I feel is that spend time doing research, because this is another area that people get very creative to write down what they know about on the buyer persona, but they may not do the necessary research, because this is not a creative document where you write paras and paras about the person you know or you are selling to. You got to really do the research, which means pick up the phone or send a survey, look at the analytics, connect the dots. So please do research, please ask your customers, and some of the customers may be really willing to share all these pointers anyway, so it is in your benefit. So do the research, spend some time.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that. Make whatever you're working on, that buyer persona, an actionable document, and research. Talk to your customers. Actually talk and find out for yourself what's out there. Brilliant. Fantastic tips. Surbhi, thank you very much for being on the Power Hour today. And thank you for so generously sharing, first of all, your 10-point worksheet with us. So everybody who's joined in, remember to go visit the link that is here in the comments, download that for yourself and put it into action. And Surbhi, so yes, thank you very much for joining us. And remember, also, hey, everybody who's joined in, go listen to that episode. That link is also somewhere in the comments, because that was a brilliant conversation. It was about all things marketing with Surbhi on our own podcast, which is the Dare to Scale show. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to that, go subscribe today so you can continue following conversations like these.
Totally.
Our next Power Hour is going to be on 2 weeks from today, which is 8th of September at 11 a.m. UAE time or GST. So remember to join us, because we continue the conversation for identifying your strategic playing field. So we've completed the why. Today we had a enormous conversation on the who, and next week or the next time we start with what do you sell, what do you offer your customers, what is the value, how do you identify the value of what you are giving your customer, how are you narrowing that gap that the customer is facing right now. So it's all about what are you bringing to the table for your customers. Remember to join us. Surbhi, thank you very much. What a brilliant conversation. This is going to go down as one of our best episodes so far, and the first, of course, with a guest.
Totally.
My pleasure, absolutely. Thank you guys for inviting me, and you know how to get me talking of my favorite topics, so win-win.
It has been absolutely wonderful. Remember to join us again on 8th September for the next Power Hour, where we talk about what is it that you bring to the table for your customers. On that note, we will sign off. Both Evan and I are hugely grateful for everybody who joined us on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. Keep talking, keep daring, keep growing. Bye for now.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.